Hello everyone, this is Tengu Rue, and welcome back to another Bloodborne boss drawing. Last episode, we uncovered the secret of the fishing hamlet, and defeated the Orphan of Kos that placed a curse upon the blood-drunk hunters and their descendants who ravaged the village. These hunters, who performed horrible experiments upon these inhabitants, were from Byrgenwerth, some of whom left to found the Healing Church. The church was led by Laurence, the first vicar of the Healing Church. In the hunter's nightmare, Laurence exists as a flaming cleric beast whose flames can never be extinguished. We come across the human skull of Laurence on the altar leading up to the research hall, an object that exists only in the nightmare. The skull is a symbol of Laurence's past and what he failed to protect. He is destined to seek his skull, but even if he found it, it could never restore his memories. We can find Laurence in the nightmare's version of the Grand Cathedral, resting upon the altar where his beast skull lies in reality. Returning his skull to him causes him to awaken and attack us in a rage. Despite being a cleric beast, Laurence is far more difficult than the one we previously faced. He has some of the same moves, now with fire added to them, and several new ones to keep you on your toes. Stay to his back for attacks, and pull back when needed. As his health drops, he will become increasingly more aggressive, while also gaining new attacks. He hits hard, so stack as much fire defense as possible to increase your chances of survival. When he gets near defeat, his legs will burst, leaving him to crawl on the ground. While in this form, lava constantly spews behind him, and he will leave a trail as he charges after you. Getting behind him to attack will be much more difficult to do without burning up in the lava, so try to stay to his sides as best you can. His charging attack is also extremely deadly due to the sheer number of hits and tracking, so try to either distance yourself or dodge away as quickly as possible. The fate of Laurence outside the nightmare is a bit of a mystery, as the game is not very clear on his exact fate, but a pretty solid guess can be pieced together. Our first encounter with Laurence in the story is after defeating Vicar Amelia. On the altar where she was praying before the fight, there is a large beast skull that shows us a vision of Laurence and Willem having a debate that would lead to the division of Byrgenwerth and founding of the Healing Church. It can be surmised that the skull belonged to Laurence, and the vision was a memory of his. We know from his human skull description that he became the first cleric beast through his use of the old blood. The beast skull on the altar is quite disfigured, suggesting a rather violent end to Laurence. This brings us to Brador, the church assassin, found locked away in a cell in the hunter's nightmare. He is found wearing the scalp of a cleric beast. A fellow cleric transformed, and Brador took care of business like he always did, and decided to wear his ally's own hide. Afterward, the church hid him away and gave him a soundless bell of death to both protect their secret and allow Brador to continue his work as an assassin of the church from within. Looking at these facts, it seems that the secret the church wanted to cover up was not only the beastly scourge, but also that the head of the Healing Church itself had succumbed to it. It is very likely that Brador slew the transformed Laurence and wore his scalp as a symbol of his reverence for him and the church. Another interesting idea is that the bloodletting beast that we discover in the Chalice dungeons is Laurence in reality. Perhaps not the first one we find, but there is a second that is missing its head and being controlled by a parasite. This is reinforced by the fact that the name of Brador's weapon is the Blood Letter. I decided that wearing Brador's set in the drawing would be the most fitting with his possible connections to Laurence, and I think it works quite well with the boss. The demented mace that Brador uses as a weapon assumes its true and terrifying form after it draws upon blood from the inner reaches of one's body and soul. This is the only effective means of expelling tainted blood, or so Brador, isolated in his cell, continued to believe. With the drawing of Laurence done, we'll have finally finished up the last boss of the Old Hunters DLC, and be ready to take on the last 2 bosses in the main game. Gehrman, the first hunter and caretaker of the Hunter's Workshop in the Dream, will be our next challenge. If you have any suggestions for the gear to use in that fight, please let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.